Here you are again, up late at night, frantically typing at your computer, surrounded by homework assignments, textbooks, and empty cans of Monster. You glance at the clock and sigh to yourself, you have to be at work in 6 hours. This is a story that college students, like ourselves, know all too well. It is hard to use that minimum paying job to pay for books, school, and something to eat other than ramen noodles. But what if the minimum wage was paying $15 an hour like the minimum wage supporters are trying to achieve? Making more money per hour seems like an easy solution, not just for penniless college students, but also for the entire country. So the simple question is, would raising the minimum wage actually help the country as a whole? Looking into this topic, there is supporting evidence on both sides of this controversial issue, and we will give a full understanding of all of these arguments for the topic. Today, I would like to share the facts of minimum wage and how it will affect our country on a large scale, and then how it could influence the hardworking employees of America. Before we take a look at the direct changes that may affect people directly today, it is important to look historically at our economics and the role that the minimum wage has played in the past on a large scale in our country. The progressive scale of increasing the minimum wage has not been following the same progressive scale of cost of items, leaving people unable to sustain themselves. Research by Aaron Pasidi in 2015 shows that adjustment for inflation, the current minimum wage is at the same level as it was in 1956 and reached its maximum inflation adjustment value in 1968, when it was worth $10.89 in today's dollars. Had the 1968 minimum wage grown at the same rate as the cost of living, it would be at $16 today. In 2017, Drew DeSliver does research to find that since the minimum wage is at $7.25 and the cost of living continues to go up, we have lost 9.6% of our purchasing power due to inflation. Even with the increase in base pay, the minimum wage will be no higher than it had been in the past. The minimum wage had roughly $8 per hour over the past 6 decades. President Obama's call for a $9 minimum wage would still fall short of historical highs due to Craig Harrison's research in 2013. Craig Harrison also created a graph that I would like to show you guys today. This graph represents the change in minimum wage over the past since the 1900s. As you can see, it goes up and down a lot. But right here, where the star is, that is the average of the past 60 years. This purple line represents where we are today. As you can see, there are lots of areas where we are right above that, and where we should be is probably at least around where the average is, if not more. Secondly, although our economy could use the help, some argue that raising the minimum wage uniformly for the entire country is unnecessary and could cause more harm than benefit. They clarify their stance by comparing our minimum wage with the rest of the world. This graph converts all currency to American dollars and takes out taxes as well. Here's the graph that I'm talking about. The United States is highlighted right here. As you can see on the graph, we are not very far from the top, and as you can tell from these values, we are very close to those around us. Also on that graph, it shows countries like Australia much higher than where we were. This is because the higher minimum rates that they have in their countries help to support them with their higher living rates in those countries. For instance, in Australia, the consumer prices are 8.07% higher than it is in America. These numbers were shown through Numio's Calculations, which is an online website that compares different countries and the prices between them. These deniers of the minimum wage raise also support that that raising the minimum wage for the entire country might hurt certain cities and states. The cost of living in Manhattan is 2.5 times the cost to live in Alabama. 2.5 times. Why would we set a cost of living which is different across every state to have the exact same minimum wage rate? As author Mark Perry writes, a uniform federal minimum wage may be suboptimal to many states, and uniform states' minimum wage may be suboptimal to many cities. A one-size-fits-all approach to the minimum wage is really a one-size-fits-none. These past few minutes, we looked at how the minimum wage will influence the United States history, each separate state, and things on a large scale in our country. But what about how it affects us personally? These alterations on a large scale will trickle down to affect the daily employee due to how companies react to the changes. Even if the minimum wage increases how much you get paid per hour, it may also increase the jobs you find and the businesses that you can work for. Some large corporations will only need to increase in prices slightly in order to pay their employees this increased pay. Two writers, Greg McClure and Kurt Covert, both mention a study that was done by Purdue University to calculate the change in cost of items on a menu of a popular fast food chain if the minimum wage was raised to $15. For instance, the cost of a Big Mac from McDonald's would increase from $3.99 to $4.16. The fast food industry could easily cover the increased cost of having to pay a $15 minimum wage without reducing any costs and still having money left over. That was a quote done by Kurt Covert from looking at the research done by Purdue University. Additionally, small companies will need to take more drastic measures. Tyler O'Neill states in 2015 that not all companies can meet the expenses of paying their employees more. Big businesses can afford to take a hit, he says, but the mom-and-pop shops may not be as lucky. And as smaller businesses close their doors, big businesses don't have to face as much competition. CEO Mike Capel writes an article on 5 steps for small businesses to survive the minimum wage changes. One of his main points is to limit operating hours. These are things that large companies will not have to worry about, but as smaller companies close their doors earlier, it will force people like us to support the large corporations rather than the hometown businesses. Due to these changes, workplaces have higher expectations and attitudes to their employees also. It may be more difficult to get a job without experience. Businesses owners will expect people with experience when they're hiring to pay someone $15 an hour to do a simple job that may require not as much skill. Say you were a 16-year-old looking for your first job. Without any experience, it's hard to convince a company that you're worth the $15 to them. Forbes journalist Matt Rizzo summarizes that a high minimum wage prompts many firms to hire fewer teenagers, or none at all. Companies will only hire a teenager if they think that teenagers will increase their profits, and a higher wage means less profits. That's not good news for those teenagers. On the contrary, in a positive note, once you are placed in the workforce, there are many good things that come from an increase in the minimum wage. Those who are already working for the company, for instance, that are earning just a little bit above the minimum wage will also get an increase in pay as well to keep the pay gap. For instance, if you've been working for a company for 2 years and you're making $17 per hour, and now new employees are making $15 per hour, you deserve to keep that pay gap from the $7.25 to the $17. as you had before, so that you can expect an increase in your pay. Also, with the minimum wage, the turnover rate of companies drops significantly due to satisfaction in pays that younger employees are experiencing. This creates a more unified and healthy work environment. Generally, these few examples illustrate a few ways that could respond to something as simple as an increase in minimum wage. In light of all this, it is clear that raising the minimum wage could have good and bad outcomes in our society. By exploring our country's past, examining our businesses at present, and catching a glimpse of what the future could hold for job seekers across the nation, I think it is safe to say that both sides are extensively researching every consequence of increasing the minimum wage. Although they are on opposite sides, they are unified together, working toward the same goal: the best interest of the United States. As we continue to support our families, work our way up the corporate ladder, or pick up another early morning shift to help pay for college, it's important to remember that even if we disagree, the greatest thing for our country is to stay unified as we strive for the best interest of the United States, the best interest of each other.